Hey, good evening, everybody. Christie Hutcherson with Women Fighting for America here on the front lines and in the fight every day for the American people. I'm so excited about tonight's program. For the last 3, 4, 5, 6 days, I have been getting inundated, and so is America's mom, with a lot of questions, a lot of confusion, a lot of information out there, disinformation out there. We're going to break this down. We're going to talk about, of course, child trafficking, the horrific acts of child trafficking. As you know, and those who have been following my organization for the last 4 years know that we have been physically on the front lines, boots on the ground, witnessing some of the most horrific acts that you can possibly imagine. The other thing we're going to break down is the movie and all the buzz about Sound of Freedom. Sound of Freedom is a Hollywood produced movie. And as everyone knows out there by now, Disney had the rights. They finally got the rights bought from Disney, and the movie was released. It was really filmed over 5 years ago. We're going to break down some of that and why that's important to know. But I'm here to tell you, as Women Fighting for America, the Sound of Freedom, where I am thankful for, is the fact that it brings light to a very dark, dark world. And child trafficking, human trafficking, organ trafficking, all of that is disgusting and vile. And this movie, it doesn't even go far enough to show you some of the most horrific things that go on in the trafficking world. And so we're going to break that down and talk about that. And the last is about microchipping your children, because again, now this is all the buzz that we're hearing on social media and in the media about chipping your child. And Sherronna Bishop and I are going to break that down and talk to you about the dangers of chipping not only your child, but quite frankly, anybody in a digital age, and what the consequences of that can be. So without further ado, I'm going to bring in my dear friend, warrior mom. Just so glad that her and I lock arms together. Proud to call her a sister in the fight for freedom and liberty, Sherronna Bishop. Hey, Sherronna.
Hey, thank you so much for such a sweet introduction. I really enjoyed our time together. And, I think that people don't realize how intensive and how really challenging the role that you have accepted and the mission that you're on really is. And I think even in our initial meeting, I was just kind of like, wow, this is a totally different world. And I've just grown to really have great affection for you and be so inspired and impressed by your research, all the work that you do to make sure that we're on the right page and we're doing the right things and the things that really move the dial. So I really appreciate you, Christy, and what you are doing to help women fight more effectively for America. I really appreciate you.
Thanks so much. We have really serious topics, but that was such a good point, and something just popped in my head. Women, and I'm an honest, I'm a straight shooter. Women tend to be at each other. And when we're not at each other and we can really embrace our differences and our strengths, our weaknesses, and I don't really think there's weaknesses. I think weaknesses is such a bad word. Those weaknesses are actually strengths. But we need to learn as women, honestly, that we don't pit against each other. We're not in competition with each other. And when we come together fiercefully, especially when it comes to our children, right? Fearless. Mm-hmm. We can really change a lot of bad, evil things in this world. We just need to learn to put the egos down, to come together, work together, love each other, and lift each other up. I'm always about empowering other women. Mm-hmm. I don't need to break somebody down to make myself look better. And I think the world that we live in right now, it's so that message is constantly being put out there that you have to make somebody else look better, say something bad about somebody else to make yourself look better, your organization look better. And that's one of the things I respect so much about you, Sherronna. I have gotten to know you in the last 6 months, and I can tell you, you are a woman of integrity. You're a woman who is fearless. You're a woman who loves this country and nation, and you love America's children. And that's why you tirelessly, people don't understand the hours that it takes a day for you, myself, and others who are in this fight to do what we do. And it is a thankless job. We sometimes get 3 hours sleep if we're lucky. I mean, let alone our children being able to have, a good hot meal on the table. But anyway.
Winning every now and then. You know what? Ronald Reagan said we can get a lot of things done if nobody cares who gets the credit. And that's where we're at in this country right now. And so that's definitely my motto in life. We got a lot of work to do, and we have a lot of things that can get done if we can tap into each other's strengths and elevate those, and just kind of let the other stuff roll off. I've been in small business development for years and years and years, and it never served anyone for me to go after the frailties of a business owner in order to get them to grow. It never works. It never, ever works. It always works to elevate and really call out the strengths that people have, and just keep our eyes focused on that. In this fight, we really have to, because the fact of the matter is, really realizing that the federal government has weaponized these three-letter agencies against regular American citizens, against parents who attended school board meetings, against commentators who spoke out on their public social media platforms. I mean, literally, you think about Sidney Powell, billions of dollars in defamation lawsuits for speaking out in her position as an attorney. Joe Altman speaking out in his position as a community leader and being sued for billions of dollars by Dominion voting machines and Eric Coomer. Like, we're under lawfare. It has not been done since the 1700s, I believe. And I might be with the 1800s. I'm so sorry, I can't remember, but it's been a very long time, like a couple hundred years since this has happened. And we're living under this age where we can't get relief, and it's very stressful. So you'll see that people have conflict, but it's simply because it's such a stressful time right now, because you don't know what this agency, what this government is going to decide they have the authority to do. And that's why it's very critical, extremely critical, that we're having this conversation, because I've learned that the globalist elites, these pedophile, satanic members of this community, they will not miss an opportunity to push forward their agenda. And if we can maybe start with the film, because I was in shock at the response I got from the public when I simply asked, number one, how was this film able to get through and get developed? And then number two, has anyone considered the vacuum that's being left behind after a film like this goes absolutely viral? I mean, it's incredible. $100 million now it has grossed in the box office on a $14 million budget. And it has brought incredible awareness, like you said. And it also, just by the nature of the subject matter, okay? I don't even care about talking about Tim Ballard. I don't care about that. I care about the subject matter and how grievous and how heart-wrenching and gut-wrenching it is, because fear is the greatest motivator that there is. The public health departments across the country were told that by Homeland Security, and to utilize that in order to scare the crap out of everybody to take an exploratory use medication and lock down for 2 years. I mean, what fear does to people is powerful, and people will make very bad decisions when they're in trauma and in fear. And the fact that so many people are really just now understanding what's been going on across not just this country, but the world, and the 800,000 children that go missing every year in America, way more than 8 million. I think that is a very low number across the world, going missing every year. I think that kind of fear and that kind of traumatic understanding can cause people to make decisions they normally wouldn't make, exactly like we saw in the COVID era. So that's really why I want to dive into this with understanding and just our eyes wide open. We were deceived once. We weren't, because we know our rights. And when the government does things that don't line up with our rights, we start freaking out. But most people think virtue prevails. Virtue matters more than your fundamental rights. And I just simply don't believe that, obviously. So
I think, Sherronna, I think Benjamin Franklin said it best. Those who want to give up a little bit of safety, freedom for safety, deserve neither. And, you and I had a candid conversation about this whole blow up of the movie. And we've connected the dots of some of the financiers behind this movie, which are very troubling, by the way. So I believe that we want to be emotional, because human trafficking, child trafficking, labor trafficking, sex trafficking, organ trafficking, this is an emotional issue. And nobody knows it better than myself and my team. When you're on the front lines and you've actually been in some of these stash houses, been on the Mexican highways, you've been where the rape trees are, you've seen little children who are rescued, it changes you who you are. Dead bodies. I mean, I could go on and on. The slaughterhouses, which are where these warehouses in Mexico, where they're taking and earmarking children, and bodies are stacking up because they're literally killing them alive for their hearts and their other organs. Yeah. We have to take a breath from now on, honestly, and I don't care what subject this is about. We need to sometimes, we want to put our heart before our heads. We need to learn to put our heads before our hearts. And we have to ask tough questions, whether it's a nonprofit organization, whether it's a politician, fill in the blank. We need to start asking tough questions. We have to follow the money, because I think that that's extremely key. And, the research that's been done, Carlos Slim, and if you guys don't know who Carlos Slim is, he's a billionaire. I think he's one of the top in the world. He is from Mexico, and he is not a good guy. He has funded the Clinton Foundation. He has funded the Gates and Melinda Foundation, numerous others, and he's also tied in with multiple cartels. I believe more than likely one of the oldest cartels, and that's the Golf Cartel. They're a little bit different. They operate a little bit differently than the other thug organization cartels. And I believe that he pays protection money to them so he can operate without having anything bad coming to him. And he's one of the funders of the Sound of Freedom.
He is, and to how much and what is the extent, we don't know yet. President Trump basically said that he was the Bill Gates of Mexico. He's talked about him publicly and called him out publicly for his financial contributions to the Clinton Foundation. And what's he doing? And he said he's a very bad guy, and it's worth looking at. It doesn't mean, and I guess I just want to be clear about this, it doesn't mean we can't always control who is a part of our efforts. That is for certain. I mean, when we did the Aspen Fact Fest, if we had known who some of those people were that showed up, who've just had enough of government overreach, everyone has a line that for some reason they go, I want to be a part of this. I want to help with this. So we can't always control who is a part of our project. But one thing that does have to happen is, and this is what I have said, is listen, these guys are grown men, okay? They don't need to be pampered. They don't need to be protected and pillowed and cushioned around. They can answer a couple of hard questions. And there are some hard questions possibly in our minds that, hey, can you just explain how was it that you were able to get Carlos Slim to contribute so mightily to this film when everyone knows that the cartel is dramatically involved in human trafficking? What was it? What was it that was said or done that he helped to fund this film? I think that's a perfectly legitimate question to ask. And I think too, like this is why I get so nervous about For the Children movies. Whenever you throw For the Children behind it, you can get people to pay taxes without questioning, and everyone else is just a jerk face who doesn't want to see kids be educated in public school settings, right? If you throw For the Children behind it, you can get community centers built on the back of taxpayers forever and ever and ever because it's, quote, for the children. So when you add one more cause that is I'm extremely conscientious of this. I've been talking about this since 2017. If you use For the Children behind it, I'm automatically skeptical of you, because we all know that those are the three biggest, best words for fundraising. So it's a natural question that should and can be asked, and nobody should be gaslit for asking that. When it comes to everyone that I've spoken to who's kind of been in this movement who've actually been working with the child trafficking and doing these things, human trafficking, exploitation for years, they feel the same as you, Christie. Very glad the movie has been made and brought public. That's not the issue. Mm-hmm. The issue is, now what? Okay, if the globalists never miss an opportunity,
no, they don't.
What is the next step then? We need to have our eyes wide open. It's not to say that anyone's bad or evil or criminal for putting the information out. But if I know anything at this point, I know that this darkness never misses an opportunity. So let's segue into that and look at what they're talking about. I want to talk about predictive programming just a little bit. MyChip, right? MyChip has been a program implemented by the Masons across the country in multiple states. Okay. Now, they literally went on the Tennessee MyChip site, added to their site, this is not a microchipping program. Why use MyChip then? Why are you guys using language that you know is going to plant the idea in people's brain that this is safe? And what they're doing is fingerprinting, collecting identification, swabs, that sort of stuff, so to supposedly give to the parents. It's still data collection, which I'm really not comfortable with. And then secondly, it's predictive programming. And for those, this is very much new terrain just the last 5 years for me. I've not been involved in this. I am not involved in child exploitation. It's just that it's kind of a natural conversation because, children are being exploited by teachers at schools right now. And so exploitation comes in a lot of different ways, not just the blatant way that we saw in The Sound of Freedom. Taking children's information, their DNA. We know that books are assembled and put together of children. We know this. We have no doubt about it. I've asked people repeatedly to read the book Franklin Scandal. If you really want to understand what has been going on for decades and decades in this country, I mean, I've got a government building behind me because they're the number one exploiters of children.
Yeah, they
is
are.
your government through Child Protective Services, and of course through the political elite and the ring of children that they use and abuse, not just in America but around the world. This is no longer.
You tell me, Sherronna Bishop, with Child Protective Services, you talked about the government. Over 90,000 children have gone missing from the border. UACs, unaccompanied children, over 90,000. We cannot account for. And when people, there's like, well, Child Protective Services, they were in their care. Well, people don't understand the chain of command of children once they're intaked into the system. And people like myself, who's been on the front lines, we understand. We follow the chain of command from the inception, from the time that we have to, like for my organization, we do things differently, Sherronna. Yeah. And I wish everybody actually did what we did. And I'm going to put it out there because most people don't know that this is an option. So when we've rescued a child at the border, I know for a fact, and this is a fact, I knew that those children would be absorbed and gone missing. Okay. So what we do is I take my personal cell phone out, damn the cost, and I literally will ask that child, I will run down where their parent or their loved one is. We'll personally phone them. We personally give them our information. I get their information. I tell them the process of what's getting ready to happen to their child or their loved one or whoever that is. And we can vet this, by the way. And then when the Border Patrol, because I have to legally turn them over, or I'm a kidnapper myself. I wish I didn't have to. And so we tell them, we've got photographs of this child. We have their information. We have just like you hold up a car with their name, date of birth, all of that stuff. And we tell them, you have 72 hours to process that child. Within 72 hours, we're making the phone call. We're going to follow that child and we're going to track that child. And if that child's not reunited with their actual DNA paired family member, we're going to blow this up and we're going to come after you and it's not going to be pretty. We've never had an incident because that's the way we do. So we can do this. These NGOs, they're in the business of making money. And I don't care that nonprofits, this was not, I got blasted, by the way, by saying this the other day on my rant that I was doing. Nonprofits, make no mistake, are in it for profit.
I mean, it is absolutely true, you guys. I mean, of course, every organization has leadership at the helm, and they're going to be, it's just like not every Methodist church was supporting homosexuality, right? But whoever is at the helm, it's going to be their culture that they're creating. And that is absolutely the same with NGOs. It just can't be denied. Everyone is talking about it. Everyone has talked about the Catholic NGOs, what they've done, what they're creating, why they're doing it, and how they're getting incredible funding from other 527s and these kind of ghost organizations that pour tons and tons of money. Why? Because when we have chaos and we have kids splintered and fractured and moving everywhere, they're just far more easily exploited, whether it is for taking care of, what is it, the egg farms. You all remember the stories of during Obama's tenure, we had children, massive amounts of children go missing only to be found at an egg farm years later, doing child labor. I mean, they're exploited on every turn. I want to ask you about this idea, though, just kind of going backwards just a little bit about the predictive programming and this softening approach towards parents, towards really just people in America, first world countries, that it's not a bad idea to be using technology to protect children. So this idea of predictive programming, my chip, for example, what are some things that you see or that you have experienced that kind of show you that we're heading in this direction?
Well, I mean, you see article after article that they've come so far. All the way back in 2002, I was looking into a company called Verichip. Verichip's out of Palm Beach, Florida, and they already had 500 people sign up way back in 2002. One of those family, the Johnson family, they had a 14-year-old boy who said, "Yeah, put the chip in me." So there's a lot of issues with this, and they've come, imagine from 2002 to where we are now, where we've gotten this creative technology. There's a lot of dangers in this. It's not just from the perspective, you think that, oh, I'm protecting my child. In reality, chips are part of a technology system. Technology systems can be hacked. Mm-hmm. And if I can track my child, who else can hone in, hack the system, and track my child? And so this is a farce. And they can sit there and tell you we've got firewalls and we've got protections and we have this, that, and the other. But this is very dangerous ground. I would never want my child tracked. And the percentage of children that actually go missing, again, we have to look at safety versus freedom. And why don't we just simply do this? Why don't parents get educated on what to look for, what the signs are, be more active and engaged with their children and with their phones? The phones is one of the number one ways predators and drug cartels and these child traffickers utilize to kidnap and lure your children in. It's not these children coming up the southern border or the northern border and being kidnapped. They're lured in mostly through social media like TikTok and different private apps. By the way, Sherronna, there's apps out there that when parents walk into a room, that the child can just hurry up and push a button. And then that app looks like it's actually a video game or something else. And you have to have a code, a very specific code that nobody has but that child, to break into that system so that parent will never know what's going on behind that actual app wall.
We have firsthand experience of that with teenagers when my child was in school. I am sharing the screen right now, just so you all know. This is an article from 2015 from Business Family, from Business Magazine. Can we microchip our kids to prevent kidnapping? Now, you were already talking about they had already begun doing this in 2002 in Florida. And the question is being asked because people, of course, want to keep their kids safe. One of the things they said, like you said, was the reason they said no was the chips behind the chips that they would implant a GPS tracker in a child. You not only have to insert a chip under the skin, but a bulky cellular receiver and battery too. That is not true. And it wasn't true in 2015 either. It's been a rice-sized little granule for a very long time.
Literally this size.
Yeah, very, very tiny. And then they go on to talk about stats of missing children and different options that parents have. This is, again, an article from 2015, business article that is meant to just explain to you guys what's going on and how this is working. At least the question was being put out there by parents. What can we do to keep our children from going missing? And I definitely agree with you that, yes, there are things we need to be doing as parents just to make sure that our kids are protected. We cannot give into this type of a fear model. And can you talk a little bit about the Angel program?
Digital Angel. So Verichip actually got just recently, by the way, got another patent for Digital Angel. And I love the way that they always tie things up in these pretty little bows, right? These word labels, Digital Angel. And they're now shifting because I think that they understand, well, now with The Sound of Freedom, which is a good movie to shine this light, but then it also opens up this dialogue. And we have to be very careful, again, because you want to protect your children. Every mother, every father wants to protect their child. And so when you look at Digital Angel, they're now utilizing this for patents for like diabetes or children with disabilities. They're saying, well, these type of children with ADHD or different types of behaviors, they're harder to find. They'll go missing. They'll hide in nooks and crannies. When we're calling out for them, they won't, for the rescuers or the search party, they'll hide even more because of the type of disability they have. And they're like, well, this would be a great thing to chip them so we can track them faster, or those with Alzheimer's.
That's right.
This is very dangerous. Think about not only about what these chips can do. Anybody can track these children. Anything can be hacked. If it's a computer system, it can be hacked. Nothing is foolproof or fail-safe proof. And so, but then this also goes into a slippery slope, Sherronna, with digital credit scores. You've got your social credit scores. Bank of America, which I broke in January of this past year, Bank of America and other bank systems have been literally getting patents for what? Health type chipping and digital chipping for what? Why would a bank need a patent to track pandemic or chaos or type of pandemics and things like that? Same thing with this. If a child goes to Bill, well, you want to know why? Because if you don't fall into their ideology, they can literally flip a switch and you will not have access to your bank accounts, food, water supplies, being able to shop. Same thing with the EV cars. They can literally flip a switch while you're driving down the road and lead you, and you're rendered helpless on the side of the street. So we have to be very careful about this type of technology and where it's leading and going.
I think this is really fascinating. So in 2005, There was a gentleman who kind of kicked it off with the little rice, trying to kind of popularize it for what you were talking about, just to make life a little bit easier. He had his digital bank chip in his hand, literally put between his thumb and his forefinger here. It grew to 500, and now there are over 500,000 people that they're willing to admit that already have their bank chip in their hand. So that's already happening, okay? And it's, you know, when we're talking about these things, the goal is to normalize predictive programming. That's what predictive programming is. It's to normalize a concept. And so if you look around and you see chip programs for, you know, Colorado Health or California Health or whatever, they'll use these words that just start making us think that's just the normal, that's just what we do. Well, I want people to understand this is the direction. Like, we've read the end of the book. You will not be able to buy or sell without a number on the back of your hand or your forehead. This is not new information, okay? It's not new. We've all known about it. We all know it's coming. Where are they at in the process, and how are they going to be able to move the dial as quickly as they need to? My concern is it is through the children. And my concern is that, like we see this with the floodgates opening on the southern border yet again, all the stories that we're learning now, people waking up to the reality of this incredible type of slavery that's been happening on a magnitude that only a few like you, Christie, and some of those who've been doing this work for a long time really understood. We're now entering into this trauma circle with you, and it's shocking, and people want to fix things right now, and let's just do whatever we need to do to get back to normal. That's what I'm concerned about. And I'm also concerned about this. Bill and Melinda Gates, of course, are always in the mix of this stuff, okay? Yeah. What ultimately is going to be called is the digital ID. This is not surprising, right? We're hearing about the central bank, the central bank digital currency. Thank you. Well, Bill and Melinda Gates have been very actively involved. They've pledged actually far more than 200 million. That was in 2022. They have a renewed agreement of 1.7 billion dollars as of this year to go towards digital ID and what they're calling public infrastructure. Why does this matter? As we learned through the Aspen, literally the Aspen Ideas Fest, the correlation is health. Health is what builds economics. And so they are going in and they're utilizing their health programs in 156 countries, which is almost every single country. That only leaves a handful that are not in this program with them. And they're setting up shop to implement their health safety protocols. What we didn't know, or I was not aware of, was this, the digital ID program. They have something called the ID 16.9 podcast, which I recommend if you want to know what the world globalist elitists are doing, go to Spotify. It's literally called ID 16.9 podcast, because one of the realities of what they're doing is they have to tell you everything. They have to tell you everything. And what's terrifying to me is that their goal right now, the World Health Organization, through this whole digital ID program, is not only seeking to store our information, to get us hooked up onto the Internet of Things, as you've heard so much about, okay? But they are going into the ruralist areas of the world. They're going into the tribes of the world. They're going into the places where the religious people do not want to be a part of society. This is so terrifying. On the 16.9 podcast, okay, the ID 16.9, it's on Spotify. It's right there for everybody to listen to hear what they're doing.
Put that in the into the thread, so individuals can go. If you want to know what the enemy's planning, you have to go into the enemy's camp.
ID 16.9 podcast. And it's on Spotify. And literally, they've said you guys, it's spying. It is Germany all over again. They literally hire little villagers from each of these extremely remote places to be helpers to them in the community, where they go and they identify on behalf of the globalists. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation is really who they're working for, to figure out who every single person is in the village. They write about them, chronicle them, they report it and turn it back over to the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation through this organization, the 16.9 or ID 16.9. And the program's called, I want to tell you the exact name of the program. It is the most unnatural thing. It's called IDENA, IDENA. Yeah. And it's called Community Generated Identity. What that really means is nosy, naughty snitchers. That's what that really is. This is a program that
go into the United Nations.
Yes,
you can go into the United Nations. This was actually brought up this type of programming. And I can tell you, being in the United Nations 3 times February, and then the Vienna, and then just recently, I'm here to tell America and the world right now, who's listening, and this needs to be shared. This is a very purposeful strategic plan. You're already seeing it, by the way, Sherronna, already implemented in the United States. Anybody who flies in this country is being sucked into that real ID. You started hearing the advertising over a couple years ago. Real ID's coming. You got to get real ID. Well, now when you fly, you're certain airports like in Atlanta, you have to put your face in front of the screen. You don't show your passport anymore. That's part of this whole Big Brother system. And they're normalizing all of this, whether it's chipping your children, whether it's the banking ID system, the Health World Organization. And again, they're utilizing areas that we actually care about, right? That you get passionate about, your health, your children. And then they incorporate these really nefarious, horrible things to take away your liberty, freedoms, and control, quite frankly. And they use civil society and certain sectors of civil society to do it. And especially in these third world, very poor countries. Look at what Fauci did in Africa back in the 80s, 70s, late 70s, 80s with AIDS. And they continue to experiment on these third world type countries.
They're relentless. But here's where it comes back to America. Okay. So when we watch the film, Sound of Freedom, which I did not see, by the way, I purposely don't watch traumatic movies anymore. I just don't. I read the books. It's a little less, it's not as traumatizing for me personally. The visual just really is almost too much for me. The Franklin Scandal, when I read that book, it took me 3 months to read it. I didn't sleep hardly at all during the course of that 3 months, because I didn't know that such incredible evil even existed. I had no idea. Like, that was somewhere far away over with the witch doctors in Africa. So to find out it's right here in our backyard, and it's sanctioned and propagated by our own government, was just really difficult. And the book, by the way, has all the court documents. It has everything in it. So just to kind of bring this home, we see that there's a pattern of create the fear. I'm not saying that the Sound of Freedom was designed to create fear. What I'm saying is the globalists will never miss an opportunity to push their agenda. They see this as a win. Everyone is freaked out. They're upset about what they're seeing. They want to do something to save the children and protect the children. And one thing I would say is, if you're going to be giving money, give money to people you already know were in the fight. We can talk about that in just a minute, because the funding frenzy, everybody's a part of child exploitation. I'm telling you right now, I'm not a part of child exploitation. I just talk about it because it's what fired me up. The Franklin Scandal is what was my final straw that broke the camel's back. I was like, I can't live knowing they're doing this. Like, how can I sit here and watch my Netflix when they're doing this to kids? I just wanted to be a part of the conversation and try to fix what I could. So remember that too. But so we know they stir it up. We get scared. They create what we call the outrage circus. People get scared. They're looking for action. We know that there's already programs in place. We know that it's already here in America. We already know they're doing predictive programming. We already know about the 2030 agenda, which is the ID. That's part of what we were just talking about with Bill and Melinda Gates. That's an agenda to be accomplished by 2030, that every single human on the planet will have a birth certificate and be a part of the ID system by 2030. Okay. Then we have the Internet of Things, of which they want us to be connected to and a part of. We haven't talked about Klaus Schwab and the connection, how he plays into this, but they are extremely influential, being a part of the World Economic Forum. And that's why we're cautious and skeptical of anyone who's a junior member of the World Economic Forum, whether it's a guy with one eye who was, in the military, or it's, Tulsi Gabbard, everybody's favorite Hawaiian darling. If you're part of the World Economic Forum and you're listening to men like Klaus Schwab and Harari, his little sidekick there, then you're not in favor of liberty and freedom and self-determination and God and spirit and soul, and especially the preservation of the innocence of children. So here is how, in my opinion, they're going to get around a lot of us who would resist this. We just went through what they called a state of emergency and a global crisis. HR 4426 was signed into law in 2021 by Biden. What does this law do? It's called the Homeland Security for Children Act. Again, anytime I see a bill that says for the children, immediately I'm like, oh
Ding,
no,
ding.
oh no. It's HR 4426. Everybody needs to go pull it up. You need to declare that your county is actually a respite from this particular law. It allows FEMA, listen to this, you guys. It allows for man-made or natural disaster. It doesn't matter which kind of disaster it is. It allows FEMA to come in and secure the children.
Yep.
They take ownership of your child. They have the ability to remove your child from you in a declared man-made or natural state of emergency. Period.
Yeah, you know, Sherronna, you and I have talked about this a lot, and it's the same thing with, I believe, which is an unconstitutional overreach of the executive branch, and that is also signing away and working with the WHO, the World Health Organization, to do the same thing under the disguise of a pandemic. Well, a pandemic now is defined, and people need to understand what really truly, a pandemic is like COVID. No, a pandemic also can now be, Sherronna, it can be civil unrest.
Yes.
It can be chaos in the streets. It could be people like we saw the summer of 2020 with BLM and Black, and they could even say the J6ers. And they really, and believe it or not, the specific language, by the way, in the United Nations, NATO, and all of these documents that I was privy in these meetings, it's they specifically say right-wing extremist, MAGA. This is very concerning. So they're setting the stage for these chaos. I call it their nuclear option, I believe, and we're probably going to, unfortunately, before the 24 election, depending on how things play out in the next 13 months, I believe that this is one of their nuclear options that they can use. And when you create this worldwide next Marburg, whatever it is, they can come in and remove the children from every home in America, and they can finalize their plan. And I also believe, these events at these schools, these horrific school shootings and stuff, we can't get into this today about psych ops and psych actions, things like that. This is very military kind of high level stuff, maybe another day. But make no mistake, and I always say, they have to have individuals that we come to trust. And one of the MOs in the spy world, in the military world, in this arena, is you take somebody who possibly might not have been, they were on the other side. And then all of a sudden you flip that person and they come out and they're like talking bad against the world, all of the bad players, the Bidens and the World Economic Forum or whatever. They flip the switch and then they draw you in and you're like, oh my God, that person's so intelligent. Look at them. They're our friend now. They're exposing. No, in reality, they're still working for the opposition. And that's their way. That's one of the MOs. There's so many ways in warfare to win the fight.
Not to mention they look like a Marvel character. Can I just throw that out there?
Oh, I love that. Yes, they look like and I'm not calling out any one particular person.
I am.
We just need, honestly, America, we have to be smarter than them. We haven't been, and I'm going to be honest with you, we've been playing on the defense. It's time for us to wise up, get smart, and understand not everybody is who they say they are. And it's up to us to really take a deep breath, again, put the head before the heart, and vet individuals. Really vet them, not just listen to what they're saying. We really need to understand fundamentally, Sherronna, people change, but they don't change that much. If you go back to their ideology is pretty set in stone, typically through your college and your early young adult years. And that's typically who you are. You do have individuals who do change. I'm not saying that, but we have to be seriously cautious. And we need to think for ourselves and protect and defend not only our children, but our families and our country for freedom and liberty, because it is very fragile.
That's really a great way that you just put that and said that, because unless if someone is coming out very boldly and blatantly, I think of people like Victor Marx, for example, who's been in this for a long time. Maybe people may not know his story, but I've followed Victor for a very long time. My husband was the chaplain at our local division of youth corrections for 17 years and volunteered with all those kids for a long time. We had them in our home. It was quite an adventure, I will tell you. And Victor actually came to our town and came to our correction facility to be with those kids and share his testimony. This was years and years ago. It's probably 17, 18 years ago, maybe longer, about 18 years ago. And he's been a consistent, loud, prominent voice. And I look for people that have been around in the fight, consistent, and not capitalizing necessarily. Like, it's very difficult to think of people building a lot of wealth off of the idea of saving children. If you make money and you're good at something, you write books, you make films, you do something cool, that's fine. But making money off the idea of saving children is as hard for me to swallow. Like, I probably wouldn't trust somebody who's doing that. I also think it's really important to ask for financial transparency when it comes to this kind of incredible success built around the idea that we're saving children. I look at people like Jaco Booyens, who's been at this for a long time, and again, has a history and a record of being public and transparent and helping. You, Christie, Women Fighting for America, some of the other people that you've talked about. I think it's just really important to we can never shut people down and shut this narrative down, because I've learned that the government has nothing good in mind for me. And once they've shown me who they are, I really need to listen to them. I need to stop believing the best from my government, and I need to be extremely skeptical, and I need to believe the worst, because that's what our founders said. Government at its Thomas Paine, government at its best is but a necessary evil. These aren't good situations that people are thrown into, and the government isn't good. I remember at the very beginning when Lauren Boebert first went to Congress. I don't talk to her now, I haven't for quite some time, but initially she said, it's really hard. I can see how it's really difficult for people to be here, because they literally roll out the red carpet for you. They have a red carpet literally that you walk up when you first get there to go to your training, how to be a congressperson, whatever that means. I mean, literally, they cater these people. They make them feel like they are disconnected, so much so that they would write a bill, they would write a law like this Homeland Security for Children Act, which would remove the parent from being able to defend and help and protect their own child if the government should declare a state of emergency. This is outrageous and absolutely egregious, because we've all learned that there is no length the government won't go to when they are defrauding their people, whether it's America or anywhere else. There's nothing that they won't do. And I think the fact that Kissinger was called, maybe you saw that Kissinger was meeting with Xi Jinping this week, and Xi Jinping called him his old dear friend. And I thought Henry Kissinger was on our side. Like, what's happening here?
I have learned there's a lot of deception. And again, I'm very thankful. One of the things that I always prayed for was, God, whatever you do, give me, discernment. Discernment and wisdom are my two things that I just really, really want. And people are not what they seem. And I'm always, when I meet anybody, I've got a lot of friends in this movement. It was really funny. It took a long time, almost a year, for me to warm up to anybody. And people would say, Christie, you would walk in, Reawaken America tour, for example. Ann Vandersteel, who's now a close friend of mine, she said, Christie, in Mel K, she's like, we would see you walk in, you had your security, you went and talked to a soul. And it was month after month after month, and you were like on a mission. You got on stage, you did your business, you spoke your truth, you turned around, and we were like, who the heck is that person? And it's nothing about me. It's just the fact that I have come, and especially because I've worked in the DC realm for a very long time. And I understand exactly how they do their dirty deeds. And people will befriend you. They will even write bills. I got really irritated the other day, and we talked about this before. This rhino term, right? They're not rhinos. Let's be very clear. These are individuals who are operatives. They have been trained and educated in the ways of conservatism. They've implanted into the Republican Party and hijacked it. And they passed just enough bills to stay squeaky right here to be called rhinos, right? That's the new term. But in reality, decade after decade, they've gotten a stronghold and more of a stronghold and more of a stronghold. And they've written bills like you're seeing right there. And freshman congressmen coming in, they are assigned a certain amount of dollar figure that they must raise. If they don't raise this dollar figure, they are not put on any committees. If you don't,
100% true.
you have no control. You will have no power. You will not get any airtime. And so they
100%
control
true.
you. So I understand how the system works. Most people out there were busy raising our children and trying to put food on the table. But we have to understand the enemy, and they're right before us.
Christie, really quick, I mean, does your audience realize what you just said? In order for your elected congressperson who's supposed to go there to represent you to be effective at all, they have to raise massive amounts of money in order to represent you. I mean, that's insanity. Otherwise, Kevin McCarthy does not put them on a committee. You're basically paying for your seat. That's not what we agreed to. That's
well, we won't get into. I think I told you something, and here I can tell you because I have firsthand knowledge of this. America, you ready for a bombshell? You know the super delegates out there that you think are representing you. You ready for this? To become a super delegate, it's an invitation only, even though it's not supposed to be, right? It's selective baloney. We got a phone call. I try to protect my family, so we were donors and we were also involved in the GOP. I've walked away. This is why I don't support parties. To become a super delegate for the state of Florida, you need to be involved, yes, but then you need to open up your wallet, and it was a $25,000 donation to the GOP. That's how you become a super delegate. America, that's happens in every state. These people are buying their way to the super delegate seats. It is a pay-for-play system all the way around. That is why they hate Trump. I'm going to just tell you right now, and I'm not endorsing anybody, but I think President Donald J. Trump, the reason why they're trying to put him in jail, they're trying to make him an insurrectionist, is because he doesn't play by their rules at all, and they cannot control him. We need individuals who have not been in politics at all. I believe we need businessmen who are very strong, constitutionally sound, and quite frankly, spiritually sound and fearful of God to be back into any office, because it is a pay-for-play system.
Yes. You know what? The idea that to a super delegate trumps the rest of the delegates that were voted on by the committee members, by the way. So you all can do all this hard work and do everything that you're doing to get where you want to be to represent your community in the GOP. And then a super delegate comes in and they trump everything that you just did.
100%.
It's crazy. It's not what we think we're doing, right? You know, one thing you said that I wanted to just kind of lean into a little bit is the walls and the protectiveness that gets built up doing what you're doing, especially. And it's almost necessary because, again, like the rest of the world is just experiencing the trauma that you've been going through for years doing this work. And that is why this film is really powerful and meaningful, that the rest of the world would understand what is happening. And maybe as a collective conscience, that our heart and our will is to see children be saved, to see women be free, to see, you know, our boundaries be replaced and order reestablished again. I hope that will happen from this. But it is traumatic, and you build up walls, and it's hard not to be protective of your own being, not only just with what you dealt with in Washington, but literally with what we see in that film and what we know is happening across our country. You've said it, that America rather is the largest consumer of child trafficking, of trafficking in general, labor or sex or otherwise. And I mean, that's what we're doing here in this country. And it's happening on every level. I watched a video from just a few years ago. I believe it was out of New Jersey. And I believe it was over 150 elected officials in some capacity, one form or another, were arrested due to an entire operation where all of these elected officials, representatives, were all caught in a major child trafficking sting. That was, I believe, New Jersey. I posted it on my Instagram story because that's what we're dealing with. People are in these positions of power, and there's an inordinate number, an unbelievable percentage of pedophiles that are in political positions. You know, I think of Denny Hester, who was second in, literally was right there in line to become the president. This guy was knocking kids for decades, and he was a Republican, and he was one of the best friends of the Bushes, and he got away with this for years. People knew what was going on, you know, and they never said anything about it.
there's so many people who are in positions of influence and trust, who are pedophiles, who are also in the business of the sex trade and child trade industry. And it's not just politicians, it's corporate America, it's media, and it's also in the churches. There were stings in Texas just recently, California, over 350 children. By the way, it's not out there and on a barge. They were literally rescued. We come across this all the time, and you have to have the will, right, to continue to do this, because it is very dangerous work. We put up walls because we never know who to trust. Literally, there are certain scenarios where we'll go in. We don't know if the person who's going in with us, especially if it's in a different country, if that person's a foe or a friend. And so we have to have these guards up. Sherronna, one of the things I want to also is we have to do our due diligence out there, America. I was a donor in numerous different areas, was a big giver. And I actually, quite frankly, quit doing that. I don't give to the church directly. I don't give to the United Way in for the most part, really huge organizations without really doing my own due diligence. Typically right now, well, all of my money now gets spent literally because I don't make any money. I'm a $0 CEO. You can actually Google, my salary, and you're just going to say, Christie Hutcherson gets zero money. It's just the way it is, but that's
You're
okay.
storing up treasure in heaven, girl. You are storing up treasure in heaven.
So we have to really look and follow money. I told you this, and this breaks my heart. I get phone calls all the time. My team gets phone calls. The head of my security company, Christie, can you please send a team out? Just recently, I'm going to tell you guys how another operation works. So these mega yachts, they go to these offshore islands, and also off the coast of America and Boston. They'll be right, for one example, Maui. I just got a phone call not too long ago. There was a couple mega yachts off the coast in international waters, and they call up and they buy children and women. And then these criminal organizations put them on the boats and they drive them out to these yachts and drop them off. God only knows what happens to them. Unfortunately, I do know, but I'm not going to, it's just horrific. And they're bought and sold. I didn't have the funds to send the teams because it costs an operation like that costs a lot of money. That could be upwards of over $50,000, $60,000. But we're not only are we rescuing, we're uncovering these individuals and these criminal organizations, because I'm in the business of eradication. Yes, we want to extract and save, but we really need to eradicate this. So knowing who those international buyers were on that yacht and being able to follow and track and do the things that we have the skill set to do is incredibly important. And it would literally stop this massive ring in that sector from happening ever again. So we'd save hundreds of lives. We don't have the money. So this is what I would say to everybody out there. When you have I don't care any organization, I'm not calling out anybody, because whether they're good intent or not, I look at dollars, and whether it's the United Way, Salvation Army, whoever, when you have, and this is a question that you need to ask, why do you have X amount of $50 million in your coffers? And your operational budget out of that 50 million is only 13.5 million. And that includes salaries and operational costs, electricity, all those things. So when I break that down, and why are you only using maybe $9 million a year to extract or save children? And you have 50 million. Because I'm here to tell you, Sherronna, my teams right now, if I had the resources and the funds, my teams would be out 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days. They would be relentless. Stop. You've met a couple of my team members. You've met the head of my security and operational company. Yeah. They are incredible, and they have a heart for this. I wish they could do it for free, but it costs money for the type of equipment that we even have to do to go in. Right. And so we have to be really smart, and we have to ask and be able to ask those questions without being shut down. Open dialogue is very important, because when we have open dialogue, believe it or not, that's going to save lives.
Yeah. And I think one of the cool things that I have seen that I do want to say is, as it pertains to some of the questions and concerns that we've had, we're talking so long, I lost my backdrop. Sorry. Some of the concerns that we've had, they are being answered directly. And I think this might be a really pivotal moment in the actual, those of you who've been working in this movement, to be able to somehow, if there's some way to be cohesive, to exchange information, that's always been a problem. Yes, exactly. To figure out how these that are doing the work, we know because you guys are rising to the surface, to the top, to be able to somehow work this together to really make the biggest impact. Because when I look at, it's not only about the money and what the cost it takes to save kids, but it's also about courage. It is about courage and having people at the helm who will go all the way, regardless of the personal cost. And that is really what's in short supply, is the courage to see it through to the end. And I know we're getting to the close end of our time, but if you don't mind, if you'll let me share just one little story from the Franklin scandal.
Absolutely.
That really stood out to me. Was the young man that the story ends up being kind of focused around, survives all the horrendous treatment and everything that happened, and goes on to share his testimony. He testified in court repeatedly, and nothing ever happened to these bad guys. In fact, Steve King was the name of one of them, or excuse me, Larry King was the name of one of them. He had been adopted and grafted into the Republican Party. He was a black man, so he was kind of, they were treating him like the token black Republican guy, and had a tremendous singing voice. So he would do the national anthem. He was the ringleader of the Franklin scandal. He took over a credit union, and he ran this prolific child ring to all the pedophile elites, the political elites around the country. And these children that were used and abused, it seemed as though there would never be any justice. And there was one man who ended up, he was an attorney in Nebraska, that ended up seeing this through to the end, literally until he died. He was working on behalf of these kids that had been tortured, who had been killed. All those will never even know their names of what happened to them, to find some sort of justice. And that is the spirit that is required for what's happening right now. It was, for so many of us who are doing this now, it is the promise and the hope of a future for our children. That's why we're doing it. But it will also be a really disgusting, deceitful, and evil government that will take advantage of that and will say, for the children, we need to secure them and keep them safe. So just open up your hand, and we'll put that chip in there.
We need to make sure that we are not chipping our children. We need to make sure we're not walking into this digital technology age for our convenience and under the guise of safety. I was in, I want to say it was over 3 years ago. I was in Ohio with my team, and there was an incredible church there that I was working with, and they had walked and prayed over this particular sector of their community. And it was where the gay community is, and Planned Parenthood had a slaughterhouse for abortion there to kill babies. And they kept praying. They would walk up and down that street for years and years. And finally, they were able to purchase this building across the street where these gay nightclubs and things like that were. Do you know what they found in the basement when they were renovating and cleaning out? They found cages, children's IDs, horrific stuff. This is real America. There is a lot of evil out there. And it's not just the UACs coming up over the border. It is right here on your front doorstep. And we can stop this. We can have multiple, and I am willing to lay down. One of the reasons why that we don't cross-pollinate, not me, my organization, but is because people don't want to share their intel. They want the glory. There's a lot of reasons. They want to keep the money, their donors. I mean, there's just so much involved in this. But I'm telling you right now, whether it's human trafficking, child trafficking, whether it's freedom in this liberty movement, we need to lay our egos down. And it is time for us to collectively come together and work together in unification at all costs. Julie, I really quick, I know we're up that almost at that hour, but I really like, Julie, if you're there, I know there's a lot of questions coming in. We have tons of them, over 100 questions and comments. So if you're there, if you can pick out a couple, maybe Sherronna and I can answer them. And if you could please put, can people rescue their children from the government? Can people, well, that's an open question. So I'd have to get more specific in that question on, did your child get taken by DP? I mean, there's a lot that can go into that. So can you, Conklin, can you do me a favor? Can you please email me and my team at Women Fighting for America at protonmail.com, Women Fighting for America at protonmail.com. please email me the scenario and I can answer that better than just off the fly right now, because I want to make sure I give you a proper answer and send you where you need to go. Chipping your children. They're drinking their blood. Adrenochrome. By the way, the NIH has now admitted, Sherronna, the NIH, National Institute of Health, has now admitted they've been experimenting with adrenochrome. Did you know that?
No, I did not. But what do we expect? They're Satanists. Satanists. Unbelievable. No, I did not know they were admitting to that. Really quick, just to say his name out loud because he deserves the honor. It was Nebraska Senator John DeCamp who went to battle for those kids and for that community and exposed a lot of what went on there. To be an elected official, a representative like that would be the goal if you're going to run for office.
You know, I love that. And we need more. And you know what? People, action. Let's give you guys a couple action steps. First and foremost, you need to be citizen journalist. You need to be citizen watchman. So if you see something that doesn't sit right with you, don't be fearful to be wrong. We would rather have you be wrong and save a child than be worried about, oh my God, I'm being ostracized because I may be intervened. There's ways that the police and these agencies, I call the police and the sheriff, not agencies. So you need to be watchful. For example, whether you're on an aircraft, at the airport, at this grocery store, at your school, there's signs of human trafficking and how these victims act. So there's a lot of material out there. Start reading what to watch for, what to look for. We're going to post it on our Archangel website, Operation Archangel. That is our anti-human trafficking arm. We're going to train you on what you need to look for. There's a lot of body language that goes into a trafficked victim or a child.
Yes.
But you kind of know as a parent, you have this internal like spidey sense that you're like, something doesn't seem right. Don't be afraid to call the police and say something. Take down a tag number, be a watchman.
I mean, what else are we supposed to do? At least you know that, you know what, I saw it, I said something, and I did the right thing. I've had plenty of times where it was spot on and there was really weird, bizarre behavior. And then there's been, once or twice where I thought I probably was a little bit over the top.
But that's okay, because you know what, we're talking about a life. And to what that child, once a child gets absorbed into this evil system, they are subjected to horrific acts. I mean, I can't even go into it. Think about a little girl. If this was, I want you to visualize America. This was your grandchild, your child. Could you imagine 20, 30 men penetrating your 9, 10, 12, 13-year-old, 8-year-old child, even younger, by the way? They're now doing infants even. Could you imagine that? And they don't wash up and clean them up, by the way. It's just one act after the other, bruises, being tied down, wrists so tight that they literally have blood vessels popped. They're tied down. So, and then being sold and abused and hit, tied up in dark places. Even sometimes they don't even get to see the light of day. You can be part of the solution. We just have to be brave enough to stand up and speak for these voiceless children out there. Please don't be afraid to say something. See something, say something.
I appreciate you so much. We're in fact, we're doing our grassroots call now after this. And so much of what everybody does, again, is because we're thinking of the future. A great, bright hope. President Trump said it best. We have not yet seen our greatest hour. And I'm looking forward to that. Christie, thank you for letting me be a part of this with you tonight and just diving into this. I want to continue on this path because they've shown us who they are. We need to believe them. And we need to have our eyes fully open. So
Sherronna, I'm going to invite you to do possibly a weekly. We'll keep it to 30 minutes, but where we can hit some very hard subjects that America needs to know, parents need to know. But you know what? You just mentioned something. We do have to go because we have both of us have another meeting to pop on, but it's very important. This is what we're talking about, America. Put your money where your mouth is. Stop funding 100%. Corporations who are part of the child trafficking industry. And I'm here to tell you, There's a lot of them. These woke, if they're a part of the World Economic Forum, these are bad players. Johnson and Johnson, Walmarts of the world, the Targets of the world, the Amazons and the Bezos of the world. These people are part of the World Economic Forum. We need to fund America First products, America-made products, and products that are good and clean for you. Let's talk about that. PatriotSwitch.com. Everyone right now, I want you to go to patriotswitch.com. Please use promo code WFFA or Sherronna's.
No. Use WFFA. Listen, this is where we need to be directing our energy. What you're doing here, what this movement is, we've asked for parallel economies to work with corporations that love this country, that have the best in mind for this country, that support manufacturing in this country. The more we do here at home, the less outsourcing, the less risk of human trafficking and utilizing humans as cattle we run into, right? If we're getting things from other countries, we don't know what goes on there. We need to know what's happening here and support American made, American manufactured, and American workers first. And so I applaud you for doing that, for stepping into this parallel economy and giving everybody an option. These are the things that you use in your normal everyday life. It's not anything that you're not already doing, but you're taking it away from the big box stores, from Target, who was actively grooming and trying to get children to keep information from their parents using binder kits. Yep. And I mean, it's just insanity. Like, we cannot fund these places anymore. And I think one of the things I like about your organization also is when your Patriot Switch people reach out to you, which they're going to reach out to you.
PatriotSwitch.com, right?
Yes, PatriotSwitch.com. WFFA.
WFFA, Whiskey Foxtrot Alpha. Julie, if you have that, just put it up. Please, you guys need to be part of the solution. Sherronna, tell them a little bit really quick, because I know we have to pop. But
yes. Yeah, absolutely. Now, everything you're going to be doing in, on, and around, you're going to have a great patriot who reaches out to you that's been working with Christie and her team. You guys, these are the nurses. These are the doctors. These are the teachers. These are the retail store workers who did not take the mandate. They did not take the jab. They're looking for ways to bring income to their families while also serving all of you. So treat them really well. These are patriots just like you who are trying to help you make that transition from Chinese made, Chinese supporting, which, by the way, 90% of everything we have on the shelves is from China. And if you notice that your shelf options are shrinking, you're exactly right. The supply chain issues are becoming very real life. Jim Nels comes on my show frequently to talk about, he's a supply chain expert. It's getting slimmer and slimmer. So you want to already be engaged. You already want to be shopping with American made, American first, and made right here at home, so that you're not losing out on the things that you need for your family. We got to get in the gap. It is time. I don't go to the store 5 and 6 times a month anymore. I do my one order with Patriot Switch, and then I might have to do a second order sometimes, but I always get my one order done, get the things I need. And then I'm not doing impulse shopping, and I'm not giving aid to my enemies anymore. I'm not funding them anymore. And that's the most critical thing that we can be doing right now. So as you guys move forward, know that you can fight and you can vote with your dollars. And it's time that you make that fervent decision to do it.
PatriotSwitch.com, promo code WFFA, which stands for Women Fighting for America. WFA, PatriotSwitch.com. Sherronna, there's so much here. We're going to have you back on, because I think what we need to do is do a step-by-step on what to look for. Really, parents out there, once your children go to bed, you need to take their cell phones. It's not easy.
Yes.
It's going to be very hard. They're going to be really mad at you, but you're not their friend. You're their parent, and you need to love them. And believe me, they will thank you.
Be a parent.
Protect children. Take their cell phones from them when they go to bed, and you lock them up where they cannot access them after you fall asleep, because they'll sneak in your room and they'll grab them. You need to be the parent to protect your own children. Do not expect government or chipping to protect your children. You are the protector of your children. So thank you, Sherronna. America's 100%. Mom. Please go to America. Sherronna, where can people find you?
Absolutely. Go to americasmom.net. You can find me on every social media platform. And our show is on Frank's Beach Monday, Wednesday, Fridays, 2 p.m. Central Time. We'll always give it to you straight. And we ask the questions that apparently Alan Dershowitz are afraid that we're going to ask.
God bless you. Thank you for you. God bless America. Christie Hutcherson, on the front lines and in the fight every day for you. Please tune in. You're not going to want to miss this Sunday's show on Brighteon TV. Literally go to Brighteon TV /on the front lines. Search it. I'm going to have Boone Cutler, and we are talking about 5G warfare. We are talking about China, and we are talking about how for you, what practical things you can do to secure your homes, your families, and what's to come. As always, God bless you and God bless this great nation. Thank you for watching. Share the heck out of this message.